That looks like me live on Facebook. There we go. It's weird. I feel like I'm stuck in like a maze of mirrors. I'm seeing myself on like 3 different squares, and who knows what's all going on. So, hey, everybody, welcome. If you are joining us, you have, well, if you're joining us specifically from Oklahoma or Texas or kind of one of those areas, you have so far survived the oven that is the central United States. Hopefully you're staying cool and you're inside and not having to mow your lawn or do something silly like that. So welcome. We're glad you're here. You could be doing 100 other things on a Monday night and you're choosing to join us, and I think that's pretty cool. So I'm going to remind you a couple of times here in my introduction to do me a quick favor. If you're watching, reach over, click the share button to share this video on your newsfeed. So that really exponentially reaches the amount of people that we can get this message to, and can quite literally change somebody's life. So do that. Feel free to like, feel free to comment. If you're watching, well, actually, I'm going to wait for that. Let me kind of get ahead of myself. I get all excited. If you're familiar with Parents Helping Parents, you've joined us before, you've watched, really happy that you're back. Maybe this is your first time. Maybe you're not familiar with Parents Helping Parents. We are an Oklahoma-based nonprofit organization founded by parents, primarily run by parents, with the mission of providing shared experiences, education, and resources to parents who have a child any age that might be struggling with a substance use disorder. So we have parents who have children who are 14 who are struggling with substance use disorders, maybe experimenting with alcohol or marijuana or all of the above. And we have parents who have children who are well into adulthood, 40s and even 50s, that participate in our groups who are still struggling with substance use disorders. We have parents who have children who are in active addiction, who have children that are experimenting. We have lots of parents who have children who have found recovery. We've got parents who have children who have been in and out of recovery for a number of years. And so our goal really is to bring those experiences to a mutual place where we can share those. We can share some of the questions we've gotten answered along the way. We can share some of our own insights. We want to connect people with resources local in their communities where they can get additional help. And then we just want to provide some education about substance use disorders, addiction, mental health, treatment, stigma. All of those things are really passionate for us. So there are 2 places where you can kind of check in with Parents Helping Parents, where you can get more information. One of those places is obviously Facebook, which some of you are watching live even now. For people who might be watching on YouTube or who are catching this video on a friend's feed, you can get us on Facebook at Parents Helping Parents Inc. At Parents Helping Parents Inc. and keep track of all the wonderful things we're up to and some of the changes that are happening within the organization. Or you can visit us on the World Wide Web, www.parentshelpingparents.info. for that information. So if you're watching, I'm going to remind you again to click that share button. I'm actually going to do that while I'm reminding you. I'm going to go over, I'm going to click this share button. I'm going to share it now to public. So there we go. That was your second reminder to click the share button. Let's see, where was I? Oh, how do you interact with us tonight? If you're here, if you want to interact, if you've got questions, either for me or for Parents Helping Parents or for our guest speaker who I'll introduce momentarily, we want to answer those questions. We want to be here to support you any way we can, even through the limited live feed that we've got going on now. So there's 2 ways to connect with us. One is you can directly comment on the Facebook feed, which I am monitoring right here on the right side of my screen. I guess that actually might look like the left side if you're watching me. It's the mirror matrix of Zoom. On this portion of my screen, I'm monitoring that Facebook feed for any comments and questions, so feel free to add those there. Now remember, this is Facebook and it's the internet. Those comments will be here for the existence of time. It's really amazing how hard it is to get things taken off Facebook. So if you're concerned about your anonymity, if you want to ask a private question, we've got another way for you to do that. In the title of the video, you're going to notice Text Live Questions 2. That is a text line that we have available. Those questions go directly to me. I'm the only one that reads them. After we get them answered, they get deleted. after each live stream. So if you want to protect yourself, you want to ask private questions, definitely take advantage of that text line. So one more time, reach over, click the share button. If you're watching on Facebook, share this news feed. The reason why that's so important is because even if you only have 200-300 people that you've connected with on Facebook, based on what I know about substance abuse, based on what I know about mental health, somebody from that group either is or has a family member who is struggling with a substance use disorder or with an emotional and mental health related issue. So when you share our video to your feed, all of those people who might not follow Parents Helping Parents immediately get access to the information. So if we're talking about something that could be of assistance to a loved one or to a family member, you want to share that because it can literally save somebody's life. It could encourage somebody to finally reach out for help. It could connect somebody with a resource that might actually be the thing that gets them sober or gets them emotionally well. And so share the heck out of this thing. People are always asking us at Parents Helping Parents, hey, what can I do to support your organization? Best way to support organizations and local nonprofits in your area and businesses in your area, share their content, like their content. It's free, doesn't cost you a dime, and it really helps us get the message out. So that's the scoop on just Parents Helping Parents in general and what we're going to be up to tonight. So I am going to bring into my screen here our wonderful guest speaker, Robin Potter-Kimball, who's going to be talking about lots of great things with us. We're really just going to kind of have a dialogue about co-occurring disorders and mental health related issues and substance abuse treatment. And I think the information is just going to be baller. So Robin got connected with me through a close friend of mine that's been on before, who's very familiar with Parents Helping Parents. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Kira and Stonegate, who Robin has worked with in the past. So Robin, welcome to Parents Helping Parents Live. We're really happy that you're here.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I've got just a whole list of questions. We were interested in kind of having a dialogue about some of these issues, but I want to start with something really easy. Tell us just a little bit, Robin, about you and about your background and just kind of about your experience in this field and in this work.
I'm an advanced practice nurse, and I have prescriptive authority, which means I can prescribe medications up to a point. I've been in practice 20 plus years, more than I want to remember or recognize. I've just always had a soft spot in my heart for substance use disorders. And having been in practice as long as I have, you very rarely find substance use disorders without some kind of mental health issue underlying. So my belief is we need to treat both of those to have healthy recoveries. I have worked with nurses in recovery through the peer assistance program and done a nurse support group for 20 plus years. So we've met weekly in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And I just really enjoy helping nurses get back into practice and into recovery, and so they can be out there and take care of us in a healthy manner. So I have a private outpatient practice here in Oklahoma City where I do counseling and therapy and medication management.
Man, wonderful. I have no doubt that you've just helped a ton of people over the course of your career, Robin. How did you get into behavioral health specifically from nursing?
That's a good question. I was an LPN to start with. As an LPN, I went to work in Wichita on a mental health unit, I think because I needed a job and they offered me a job. And I just found my love, and I've worked mental health or substance use disorder in some form or fashion ever since. So that's just always been my niche. So I was glad I found it in my career. Yeah,
that's great. I know you've got a lot of experience in the realm of both substance use treatment, but mental health treatment. We want to talk specifically about co-occurring disorders. So Robin, just kind of help us understand on a pretty simple level, like how would you define a co-occurring disorder? What is a co-occurring disorder?
A co-occurring disorder is where we have,
and you can we love cats, let your cat in the video, that'd be great.
I have right before we started, I don't know, my cats went crazy and they jumped all over the table and the iPad fell off. And so, yeah, you'll probably see my cat's tail. I have cats. co-occurring disorders, back to the topic at hand, is when we have substance use disorder and another mental health disorder. The common ones I find are post-traumatic stress disorder, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, and believe it or not, a lot of attention deficit disorder. And that's very hard to manage. My personal opinion, this is not anything I have researched, is that I think a lot of people who start off with stimulants or with cocaine or those kind of things are really trying to treat their underlying attention deficit disorder. And so they use and they go, man, I feel normal. And so then they get into that whole unhealthy realm of using. But it's when we have substance use disorder and a co-occurring mental health disorder.
How common is that to be diagnosed both with an emotional illness and a substance use disorder?
It's very common. I don't know that we are doing that, but it needs to be done, in my opinion, so that we have a healthy recovery. Because what I've observed through my years is if we don't treat both, then we're going to have relapses in one or both areas. So if we're not treating the depression or the anxiety or the post-traumatic stress disorder, they're going to relapse mental health, which sends them back to substance abuse or vice versa, substance use disorder.
So I don't have this question on my list, but I like to just listen really closely to how people answer and follow up on some things. We don't hear the phrase very often, mental health relapse. That's something that I think, I wouldn't say it's a progressive idea, but it's definitely relatively new in terms of how we think about mental health. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what you mean when you said mental health relapse.
Well, our goal in mental health is for people to be in remission, meaning their depression is manageable, their anxiety is manageable, their PTSD symptoms are manageable. And if they're not manageable, I think the old term was we had an exacerbation. They just continued not to function. It's usually a progression, but then they get back to the state where they came in for help. Their depression is unmanageable, their anxiety, their symptoms of PTSD. And, we did mention bipolar, and then we have the bipolar symptoms where they're either manic or depressed, but they're no longer able to function at a level of just normal everyday functioning. So that would be the relapse. And it's much like relapse with substance use disorder. And again, it's progressive. You just don't wake up one day and go, okay, I've relapsed. It's when we quit doing the things that are keeping us in recovery that we start that relapse progression.
Yeah, I really want to explore that with you, just because I think that especially people that may be tuning into Parents Helping Parents probably are really familiar with us talking about substance abuse relapse and signs and symptoms. Maybe not. If you're new to the game, you might not be. But if you've been around Parents Helping Parents for a while, you've heard somebody speak about relapse prevention or relapse red flags and those type things. But we don't often in the Parents Helping Parents world get to talk much about that related to the emotional health side. So when you talk about it, you don't just wake up one day and go, oh, I've had a recurrence of depression, that there's this progression. And I know this is a really complex and big question, right? Because it's going to be different for depression and anxiety and bipolar disorder and all these things. But in general, what should be the things that people are kind of aware of, conscious of in terms of mental health recovery that should be kind of similar red flags for lots of different folks?
There's several things that come to my mind. I think one of the first things is when we start isolating, and it's just like in substance use disorder, when we stop sharing about what's going on and how we're feeling. We all have a bad day, but if those bad days turn into 3 or 4, then we need to start looking at things early so that we can, get back on track. Another cardinal sign, whether it be anxiety or depression, is when our sleep patterns becomes drastically changed. We're doing well, we either start sleeping more, our sleep is not healthy, we don't wake up and we don't feel good. We find ourselves, and I was talking to someone today, when they're back in that habit of staying up all night and sleeping during the day. So when we change those patterns, and it may be because we're avoiding the day because we don't know what to do with our time. We don't know what to do. We're too depressed, or we feel too sad, or we're too anxious to leave our house. So we just sleep all day. And then we have excuses not to do anything because we're up all night and there's nothing else going on at night. I think the other, along with that, is when we, our peer support group starts shrinking, i.e., as I said, we don't share what's going on, or we don't think it's worth sharing, or we just think this is gonna, like I said, we think this is gonna get better, and it doesn't get any better. So at that point, we really need to step up and look at what we need to do to get our mental health back on track. And I think the other thing is education, to educate our clients that, this is not normal depression, or this is what your depression looked like. So if you start going back down that road, you need to let me know as soon as you recognize it, or as soon as somebody else recognizes it. You talk to your sponsor and say, hey, if you see me doing these things, let me know so I can reach out and get some help before I go down those, dark holes again.
Yeah.
So I think it's recognition, and it's having people around you to help you recognize. Another thing is eating. If we change our eating habits drastically, we start eating more, we start eating less. People with depression and anxiety tend to crave a lot of sugar. So if you find yourself craving carbs or craving sugar, or again, changing your eating habits, those are all things to look at. A common thing is when we start that is, we used to say that stinking thinking, this is never going to get better. This isn't worth it. This is just the way things have always been. So I might as well go out and, use substances to try to change the way I feel, because the only thing that worked. When we start that kind of thinking, that's those old mental health disorders playing, saying, well, and the addiction working together, saying, hey, this isn't working, so let's go back to what we thought was working.
Yeah. Well, so many things to unpack there. I started making notes so that I wouldn't lose track.
Yeah, and the one thing I didn't even get into is spirituality. When we start questioning our spirituality and our higher power, and with depression, when you start, just having those fleeting thoughts of life isn't worth it anymore, or I just don't want to be here, or those aren't normal. Like I said, we all have a bad day, but our bad days don't end with, oh, I just don't need to be here, or I'd be better off if I wasn't here. So when we start those kind of thinking, those kind of thought.
So I want to run down the short list that I made as you were talking, right? Just to kind of revisit and repackage those. You really answered beautifully my question of, what are some of the common red flags that everybody should be looking for in terms of their emotional health stability, their mental health stability? And you listed monitoring your sleep for healthy sleep patterns, monitoring your diet and your food intake to make sure it's healthy and appropriate, making sure that you're paying attention to your pro-social engagement and your peer engagement, peer support engagement, and then paying attention to when you begin to have those cognitive distortions and those negative thoughts of thinking, that any changes in those should be met with, hey, I should probably evaluate where I'm at, because that was a change and it could be dangerous for me.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. You said it all. I just wrote it down while you were talking. So
another thing I thought of as you were sharing that too, is those little subtle things in, I don't feel like getting up and getting dressed today. I don't feel like taking a shower today. And then it's the weekend, you haven't gotten out of your pajamas and taking a shower. I think, working from home helps promote that too, because, there's no reason to leave. But, if you're setting a routine and you have at first minimal changes and then drastic changes, but one of the common questions I ask people is, when's the last time you took a bath or took a shower? And they stop and go, well, it's been a week or so, and I'm like, you need to get in the shower, or when's the last time even if you just change into a new pair of pajamas, when's the last time you changed out of your pajamas that you sleep and eat and drink in? So it's those little kind of subtle changes also that start that cognitive behavioral whirlpool.
Yeah. kind of coming back around to our focus on co-occurring disorders, how does the co-occurring idea or mentality impact people's substance use disorders or impact the addiction cycle?
Well, again, I think it's education, and it's recognizing that there are co-occurring disorders and recognizing the treatment approach for both of those. You know, if your depression, anxiety, PTSD is severe enough, then you might need to look at medication management, especially that first year of recovery. You know, so you need to look at recovery, and sometimes that's a challenge because, you know, well, recovery means I don't take anything and I shouldn't need anything if I'm in recovery. And we can get there if we use medication management in a healthy manner, and we're honest with our providers and we let them know what's going on, you know, and so we can work together to give everybody the best recovery that they can have.
Yeah, so let's talk about medication for a few minutes, because I think that's a really vital conversation to be having in our community right now. Two kind of follow-up questions, and I'll let you answer whichever one you'd like first. One would be, how do you know if you actually need medication to make it, even if it's temporary? And the second question would be, well, let's just go with that one first. Let's just start there.
There are several assessment tools we can use. There's some very basic, simple ones for PTSD and for anxiety and for depression. And I think that's a good place to start. I also think you have to do a thorough history, and you have to look at their pattern of mood. And also, you know, especially if they've been working on trying to get sober, but they don't take care of their depression or their anxiety. And so they still are challenged with, you know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to stay sober? So I think, again, you use your tools, you look at your assessment data, and you do a thorough questioning and say, you know, what does that feel like? You know, and try something. If it doesn't work, then it may not be a chemical imbalance. But, you know, if it works, then great. They feel great. They can work their recovery program, and they're just more successful mental health wise and substance use disorder wise. So there are some assessment tools we can use. Again, you need to do a thorough one-to-one assessment. You know, when I've worked inpatient units, there has been some really great in-depth assessment tools. We used to use the MMPI, it's not used so much anymore, but there's some other ones that some of the treatment centers are using. And my first recommendation, if you're sending someone to inpatient treatment, they need to know if you treat co-occurring disorders and how you discern when they go into treatment if they have co-occurring disorders, and what your plan is to manage those.
Yeah.
Because I think the day of just straight, you know, substance use disorders is a thing of the past.
What would you say if a treatment program or a treatment center's answer to that question was, oh, we don't treat co-occurring disorders, we only treat substance use disorders?
Then
how would you feel about that?
I would find another treatment center. I mean, I would not recommend anybody go, and I don't know what those treatment centers are, so this is not an advertisement, but I would not recommend anybody going to a treatment center that did not address co-occurring disorders.
Yeah, dropping bombs. You heard it here first. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And that's my personal opinion, but that's
think
not.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say, you know, for everybody that may be watching at any given point, whether this is live or on YouTube or later on Facebook, I think it's important to remember that we bring lots of different people to talk to Parents Helping Parents, and the opinions of maybe the people that come and speak for us, and my opinion as a professional in the field, isn't necessarily the opinion of Parents Helping Parents as an organization, right? And I say that to say, I'll go out on a limb too and say that my professional opinion would be, don't go to a treatment center that says they don't do co-occurring disorders, because I think that the research tells us that it's more probable than not probable that somebody has a co-occurring disorder, even if it's never been recognized or diagnosed in the past. chances are you've got some emotional health related issues that are going to need to be dealt with while you're in treatment. And I wouldn't want my loved one at a treatment center that couldn't handle what we were throwing at them.
And if you don't have a co-occurring disorder, well, then that's great. You won't need that basis of treatment. But like, I agree with you. I think the majority of our people have co-occurring disorders, and I would not go to a treatment center that did not address both of those.
Yeah, yeah. You made an interesting comment earlier, and I just want to follow up with it. Is there still a school of thought in certain places that if you're on a medication or certain medications that you're not actually in recovery? And what do you think about that? How do you feel about that?
That the place where I've heard that the most are people who go to 12-step meetings, and they go to those, I don't know, I need to be politically correct, but the old, you're an alcoholic and that's all, you just need to quit drinking and work the 12 steps, and so I think that some of the people who've been in recovery for a long time have that school of thought. I think professionally, that is not the school of thought at this point. Professionally, it's, yes, we have co-occurring disorders, substance use disorders, trauma, depression, and that kind of thing. So I think most of the time people in recovery get that, I'm going to say flack, or that, well, you just need to suck it up, and work your 12 steps, or you're not working your 12 steps right, or you'd be in a different place in recovery. So I think that, I've worked with people. What do you say when people ask you? I said, well, you have to discern who's asking you what the information is for, and, and where you are in your recovery program. So,
yeah. How do you, especially as a provider who prescribes and does those things, how do you work with a patient to ensure, because I think that the risk is, and I think the old school thought is, don't do it because you might not be able to do it managed and you might abuse. How do you work with a client who needs a medication, maybe even something like Xanax or some sort of anti-anxiety medication that could be abusable? How do you work with them to ensure that they're using that medication appropriately?
well, I think there's several ways. Again, you need to keep track of them. You need to see them frequently, especially in the early stages if you're going to prescribe medication. You also, there are ways we can prescribe. You can prescribe 7 days at a time, 5 days at a time, with no refill. So even if it's an antidepressant, I can abuse Tylenol if I think it's going to change the way I feel. And so you can check in with them, only prescribe certain amount at a time, make sure that you follow through. Benzos are my last resort for about anybody, so if someone's on a benzo, we're limited as an APRN what we can prescribe, but I think you have to keep close eyes on, you have to monitor them, and you have to be willing to say, I gave you this script, you're already out, what's going on here, and let's have a conversation about what's happening.
Yeah.
And not be hesitant to have that conversation, because the reality is that most of the time they want to talk about that. They just need someone to say, hey, okay, this is not working. You're taking more than's prescribed. If we need to up the dose, that's fine. You need to talk to me, so that we do it professionally, and so that you don't have that feeling that you're sneaking, or that you're, back those using thoughts and feelings and actions, that we're being honest. So let's talk about what's going on.
Yeah, it sounds like really strong and honest, open communication between patient and provider with that stuff is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is.
You said earlier that people need to make sure that they're really being honest with their providers and being upfront with them and telling them the truth. What are the things that patients need to make sure that they're always talking to their providers about?
How they're doing, how they're really feeling. It's like we said, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you taking a bath? Have there been any subtle changes that you noticed? Has your family, friends, partner said anything about, hey, because I have people call me and say, my partner said, I need to call you because I'm just not acting right, and I'm like, thank you. Or, you have a connection with your partner or somebody who will call you and say, will you please call and check on them because some things just don't seem to be right now. And you know, and as always, not everyone's going to be honest, but you look at patterns of behavior and you look and go, okay, again, behaviors aren't changing, you know, thoughts aren't changing, actions aren't changing. So let's look and see what's going on.
Yeah. How likely would it be for somebody who's been diagnosed with a co-occurring disorder? Well, I'm trying to think of how I want to ask this question. A lot of times it's really hard for us, even as professionals, to begin to sort out the intertwinedness of the emotional health related issue and the substance abuse related issue. Is it necessary to know which one comes first, or is it just, hey, let's just get in there and start digging and create some change?
It would, I don't know that we can always discern that. I mean, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I mean? We have people who have a lot of childhood trauma. Did it come first, or did they already start having a pattern of potential for substance use disorder? You know, so I think in my practice, I don't know that it matters which came first. All I know is that I need to treat both of them at the same time.
Yeah. Would it be, and this is a legitimate question because I've never asked anybody this, and I don't know because I'm not allowed to give people medications legally. Is it beneficial or like a medical necessity for people to be substance free for X amount of time before starting a new medication? Or how do you begin to sort out some of those type issues?
It would be great if everybody was substance free. My professional opinion is, you know, if I can maybe start working on their depression or their anxiety or their trauma, you know, and get them in a better place that way, more emotionally stable, then I can maybe get them ready to start working on their substance use disorder, and vice versa. You know, if I can start working on their substance use disorder and we see things appear that we need to address, and I'll be able to do that. So I know there's a lot of people that say, well, if you're still using these medicines aren't going to work. Well, I don't always agree with that. Again, it depends on what they're using, and it depends on where they are as far as readiness to work on their substance use disorder and their mental health disorder. But I think at least we can start, you know, and get some relief someplace, so we can maybe, you know, again, work on their mental health issues and then come in and work on their substance use disorder issues.
Yeah.
So
just out of curiosity, because I know there's different schools of thought in the professional community, and I know I've even had different people do Parents Helping Parents Live that are in different schools of thought. Do you kind of subscribe more to a total abstinence model, or would you say that you fall like more into a harm reduction type model, or do you just leave that kind of up to the individual patient's goals?
I leave it up to the individual patient's goals. I think that I really go more toward a harm reduction model. I mean, I'd much rather have somebody smoking pot daily than, you know, shooting meth daily. I mean, you know, you got to put it into.
That's fair. Yeah.
You know, do I promote that you go get your medical card and use cannabis daily? No, but if you can function, you know, and you're not out on the streets, you know, shooting meth, that's an improvement. You know, that's improvement. So and then I think that gives us an opportunity as to what the cannabis is doing. I mean, is it helping manage anxiety or depression, or some other things that we need to tweak there? So I think that that the days of total abstinence are great and nice, but I think that sometimes we set people up for relapses because they aren't able to do that. You know, if you look at the methadone programs and the Suboxone programs, I mean, you know, that's what they're about. It's about harm reduction. And I think with those programs, the initial goal of those programs was to help people, you know, get into a program of recovery and then wean off of those medicines, not to be on those long term. And that perspective has changed in some areas. But I still think there are providers out there. I've worked with nurses who have been on Suboxone and couldn't go back to practice until they were off of it. And they found providers to help them, you know, take it for 6 months, get their recovery on board, and then start winning off and then be able to get back into practice. So, there are ways to do things that are healthy. So.
Yeah, you never know what kind of landmine you're going to step on in Oklahoma related to some of these topics. And I actually had a couple of Parents Helping Parents live speakers who were from a opiate medication assisted and treatment program come on and talk about that. And I was a little worried that I was going to kind of catch some heat, because I know that there are people, and what I'll say is I don't really care how you feel about it either way. I've got colleagues that I love and respect and trust that would never refer somebody for medication assisted treatment. I've got colleagues that I love and respect and trust that wholeheartedly believe in medication assisted treatment. And I think that it's okay to be in either camp. But I was a little worried that I was going to catch some heat from people in the organization or from other professionals about that particular episode. And the best piece of feedback I got was from a colleague, close colleague of mine, and I won't use her name because I don't feel like that's very respectful, but they just texted me personally after the show and said that they really appreciated hearing that perspective, because they a number of years ago had a child that had passed away from a heroin overdose. And they just said, I would much rather my child be using medication assisted treatment and be alive. And I thought that if you're watching, the person that sent that feedback, I want you to know that feedback meant a lot to me. And I really appreciated that, because I was worried that it's not always received well sometimes in Oklahoma right now. So lots of different things there. But
right. And I think that goes back again to what our definition of recovery is, and how we support people in the choices that they make, and again, I think education is the way we do that. And that's what you all do so well, is educating and going, it's an option. Is it one I would choose? I don't know. But is it one maybe that's appropriate for you? Great. Then here's a place that's valid and that will work with you and to help you obtain that, in the healthiest, safest way possible. And that's the goal always, is to keep people as safe as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Robin, I ask everybody that kind of comes on if you had like a 60-second message of hope to deliver to somebody who maybe comes across this video that's struggling with emotional illness or addiction, or maybe they have a family member that's struggling, what would your kind of 60-second message of hope be for somebody tonight?
I guess my first thing is to not give up hope, and to because I know sometimes it can be very disheartening, and to weigh options, and to not get into that recovery has to look like this, or we have to do this, or this has to be the way they do it, and the way we as a family do it, or the way the person with the substance use disorder, because as we know, it affects the whole family, and to look at options and to be educated, and to make educated decisions for yourself in your own recovery program, and for the person with the substance use disorder, and to not allow other people's recovery to be yours or vice versa, that everybody's recovery truly is individual, and that we learn to respect each other in the healthiest, safest way that they choose to be in recovery.
Yeah, love that.
Was that 60 seconds?
That was perfect. I don't know if it was 60 seconds or not, but it was just right. So, man, Robin, thank you so much just for taking time out of your Monday and being here. I can tell that we would get along amazingly if we ever sat down and have coffee. So it's really been a pleasure to visit with you.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you. And I'm glad I could be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hey, for everybody that joined us, stay nice and cool out there. And we'll be back the first Monday of August. We've got a really great lineup for the rest of the year. We've got all of our speakers lined out through January. So we're ready to rock and roll this thing. Be sure to tune in first and third Monday of every month right here on Facebook. Thanks for joining us, Robin. Have a beautiful night. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Y'all take care. Bye-bye.